just a lad, I used to watch my dad, and when he had a drink, coffee's all he ever had. Was a coffee fanatic, for years he was at it, a coffee fanatic, growing old. When I was 12 years old, and I was brave and bold, I had a cup of coffee, now I'll drink it when I'm old. I am a coffee fanatic.
Hello and welcome to another little section on the YouTube videos. Here I'm going to try my best to describe, with an interruption from a cat, you can really tell this is live, we're going to try our best to describe how we are mowing and, how we are peening our blades and how I'm telling people on the courses we run. Okay, so I'm going to ask you nicely to go away because it's a bit dangerous here. In that direction, skedaddle, thank you. So first of all, we need to have a quality hammer. The hammer needs to be harder than the scythe blade. I understand that the scythe blade is 47 Rockwell, and that means that the anvil and the hammer both have to be harder than the blade. So we have German anvils from German hammers from Picard, and I understand they are 50 or 55 Rockwell, and we have the long anvil here from Schreckenfuchs, where we get our blades from, and they are, I believe, 60 to 63 Rockwell, even better. So we're going to use one of those to demonstrate. Now we have a very useful little tool here called a sanding block, or we call it a mushroom here in Czech Republic, and we are using that just to clean the very edge of the blade to keep it nice and shiny. Okay, and we also use it on the anvil to keep that beautiful and clean, and hopefully you can see from the blade it's beautiful and clean. This isn't my one, but my one does look similar, and the reason for that is we don't want the rust to become, well, first of all, we don't want the rust to dirty the hammer as we hammer. We don't want the rust to get pushed into the anvil, you know, and we want to prolong the life of all of our tools and look after them. But the main reason is, if we keep it all shiny and clean, it's actually possible to see what you're doing. And only if you can see what you're doing as you bang with a hammer, and if you go slowly while you're learning, is it possible to actually get feedback through your hand, through your eyes, back down to your hand, and to make small adjustments to make sure that you are getting that line across the blade nice and smooth and consistent and joined. A big mistake that a lot of people make is we think we are peening the blade, it looks okay, it's kind of dented and damaged a little bit, then we think that's alright, we go and mow, and then we think we hit something, and we come home or we're in the field, we notice that the blade starts to get split or damaged or kind of nicks in it. And my experience is that all of those nicks and damages that we attribute to being caused in the forest are actually caused by bad and inconsistent hammering with the hammer. If you imagine if you hit it in the same place twice, then that piece of metal becomes twice as thin as its neighbouring one. Or if you somehow just have the hammer twisted a little bit as you're banging, then you'll clip the blade with the edge and you'll have this little sharp nick in the blade. So we want to make sure that the centre of the hammer is the place which has contact with the blade when it hits, and you can tell what you're hitting. As we're going to be peening, we'll show you with a hammer that you'll see the little hammer marks where they are on the hammer. So from time to time when you're learning, you can lift up the hammer, have a look and see, are they in the middle, are they here, are they here? Okay, right now it's all clean so you can't tell, but in a minute we'll come back and have a look. So how have I got it set up? You see, I drilled a hammer in my block here, big comfortable block to sit on, so there's lots of resistance to the actual hammering, and the peening can occur better if this is really solid and massive, because it doesn't go into the earth and there's no, you know, the energy is rebounded back straight into the actual peening you're trying to do. We have it here, very interesting, great camera work from my assistant here. We have the anvil at an angle away from me, and the reason for that is, as I hold my blade on here, it needs to be 90 degrees to the anvil. So I'll tilt it forward and you can see it's roughly 90-degree angle between the two. and the part I'm hitting needs to be in the center of the anvil, okay? So if I'm hitting the edge, the edge needs to be in the center of the anvil. If I was hitting a bit further over, I would move it closer to me, but we'll show you that in a minute. So I have it at this angle tilted forward because of the sun and the reflection. If I had it at 90 degrees in the wood, then I find I would have to kind of bend over and lean down, which is very unpleasant, and twist my back in order to see the reflection. So that simple action of bending the anvil over means that I can sit a little bit more up straight, and I don't have to damage my back quite so much while I'm peening. Another important thing is you want shadow behind you and light in front to help again with the reflection, because we want to see what we're doing, but we don't want direct sunlight, because we have everything so shiny and polished it just glares straight into our eyes and is very painful. Another useful tool that I won't be using now, but is quite useful, is hearing protectors. Okay, yellow is my favourite colour, so I have yellow ones. But you might even want to buy them for your neighbour or for your wife while you're peening, because it can be a little bit disturbing on your ears. So, we're not even ready to start peening yet. I've still got more things to say. Is if we can't hold it, the blade, steady on the anvil, you know, we are just chasing it with the hammer. Okay, there's no point if we can't hold this still. So how I do it is I have my finger underneath the blade and I push that up against here. So I'll show you. Imagine this is the anvil, that's the top of the anvil, and I hold it like that, pushed up against. And this helps me to have something to push it against to prevent it wobbling so much. The other thing I do, I use my trousers, my knee here, to get the height right, and then I clamp it with my wrist as I'm peening, like that. I'm a bit of a sweaty person, especially when I'm working hard, and if I'm not careful in the summer, I can have a bit of a sweaty wrist, so I have to be careful I don't smudge the metal and like my nicely cleaned, polished surface before I've banged it at all and made the marks. I have to either roll my shirt down or avoid getting on the very edge. Okay, so something to be aware of if you're like me, a sweaty person. So, and the other thing is we want to practice perfectly, because only perfect practice makes perfect. A lot of people can say, you know, I've been scything, I've been peening for 20 years. You know, my grandfather is 90 and he's been peening all his life. But the question is, was he practicing perfectly all that time to attain perfection? Or was he just doing it? You know, and I'm not judging here, but it's, you know, if we want to get good at anything, we need to focus and plan, and I'm not saying I'm the best at it, okay? This is what I'm trying to do, alright? So don't think I'm preaching here. So the idea, if we're learning, is that we need to slow it down. We need to hit not very hard, okay? Because what we want to do is, we're not trying to peen from the beginning, we're trying to learn how to peen, okay? So it might take a lot longer to get the metal to pull forward and to become thinner, but we want to do it well, because we don't want to damage our blade while we're sitting here and then blame it on some tough grass, or a snail got in the way, or you know, a rabbit looked at my blade and it got damaged somehow, and all that stuff. We want to reduce the damage, and we want to cut with ease while we're smiling, and that is much easier if we have a super sharp blade, okay? So we're going to hit slowly, and to give time for what we see with our eyes to be transferred down our arms into the hammer, and then for us to make minute changes of twisting. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but we're going to be moving the hammer around and adjusting. So what am I going to tell you now? Let's just have a go. So I'm holding it steady in the middle. We start off slowly, get a rhythm going. And I'm having trouble seeing yet. I can't see anything. Okay, there we go. I can see myself now. So until I see the reflection. It's not very good though. Oh really? I think I might move it back into the barn a bit. Okay, that was a wonderful example. I was peening away out there and I just couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the marks, and really there was too much direct light above me. So we have retreated a little bit inside the barn where there's no direct light, but there's light just coming from in front of us. And I've already tested it beforehand and it's going much better now. So we will commence with the instructions. So we're having our hand in the correct place here at the back. We are locking it a little bit with our elbow to prevent it moving, using our foot, our leg to get the height right so that the whole of the blade is in contact with the actual anvil, so it's not up at one edge or down at one edge. Again, the place that we're hitting is going to be in the center of the anvil, and we are learning right now, okay? So I don't want to suggest that you try to do any more lines away from the edge. You are just going to practice hitting the very edge, and you will keep doing that until you feel confident and it becomes easy. And that is a strategy, just this very edge here, that is a strategy to avoid damaging the blade and getting frustrated, because we don't want to get frustrated, because then we'll just either hurry and rush and then it will get worse, or we'll give up. We want to set it up for success. So let's stop talking, Neil, and we'll actually do some peening. So again, I'm seeking the marks as I'm peening, and I'm going slowly. I'm using my left leg to just apply a small amount of pressure to push across. Now, I've got other videos which probably will show much better. I might even just change a different hammer in a minute. Hopefully you get the general idea. What I want to mention one other thing here is that there are generally two hammer actions, okay? There's the one we use most of the time, which is the down and pulling towards us. And I understand this hammer action helps to move the metal the quickest, okay? We don't want to rush to move the metal by hammering harder, but we can use this motion to speed it up a bit. Of course, when we get better, and we don't have any problems with accuracy, and we don't bang with a hammer at a funny angle and kind of create damage, then we can speed up, we can start hitting harder and everything, but we don't want to rush that. The other hammer motion that we're going to use is just straight up and down, and the reason we do that is to work harden, I think it's called, the very edge. And it has an effect on the metal. You bang it down and it just kind of shocks the metal and makes it tighter, and makes it more stronger and brings it all together. That's how I would explain. I'm not a meteorologist, so but it's an important thing to do, and I've noticed personally that it makes the edge more durable, so I'd highly recommend you do it. So basically, once you have the edge to the thinness that you require, and we'll talk about that again, what that means, then it's time to clean it once more with the magical sanding block, and then just to do the up and down hammer action. So I'll quickly just demonstrate that motion, and you can see what it looks like. So again, we're starting slowly. Once you feel you can see the marks, then you try your best to keep the hammer at the same angle. You could be sitting here for quite a while, so you might want to try breathing in some pattern, counting with these strokes, 1, 2, 3, in, 2, somehow breathing in and out as you hammer the blade, so the tension in your shoulders is reduced. At least that's what I do. And when I'm peening thousands of blades, hundreds of blades, I shouldn't exaggerate too much, then I often listen to music in headphones, or podcasts and stuff like that, so I'm not too bored. And again, just cleaning the very edge of the hammer. From time to time, cleaning everything. So now I'll just show you a little bit quicker, and for a few more minutes how I do it now after all this time, okay? So So I'm already getting a bit harder, quicker. This blade isn't so straight, hasn't been peened so consistently. And when you get to the end, there are different ways to hold it at the end, but the same principle applies, that you're using your finger underneath or at the end, or some combination, so that you've got some kind of a locking mechanism against the anvil, And my hands are already quite strong, but I would recommend in the beginning using your other knee, your right knee, to support it out here if you can't hold it steady, and using this knee when you get to the very tip to hold it steady, and you might have to contort yourself a little bit. Another important tip is that we don't want to cut into our trousers or our skin, so we're never going to drag the blade over our knee, but what we do is we move the knee with the blade as it comes through here, and then we stop and we reposition, and then we do it some more like that, because we don't want to cut our leg or our knee. So I'm often just doing this in shorts or boxer shorts during the summer, and I've never cut my legs at all. But if you're worried, put some leather or something over your legs, but I think it's better to use that strategy. So let's peen here a little bit. Again, as we're peening, we're using our left leg to either lift up or down to make sure that the whole of the blade is in contact. We don't want it like this and we don't want it like that. We want to have it all in contact. Let's start here again. And hopefully by the time we're gonna do 4 lines on this blade eventually, and then it will become a little bit more consistent. They're kind of misshaped here a little bit and dented. Really quite nicely peened, but everything can be better. I'm having trouble seeing where I am exactly. There we go. So I'll slow it down a little bit. And we're doing the pull-in hammer action that I described. There are 2 hammer actions. So our knee is now close to the sanding block and to the block, and we need to move it away again, not dragging the blade through our trousers or leg. Carry on. Thinking nice thoughts about our meadow and feeding my animals with hay, or encouraging my family to mow. Reposition again. So I'm doing it a little bit like little here, little there, but ideally you would either start from the end and do it all in one go, or you might find it easier sometimes to do it in this direction. I suggest trying it in different ways, but if you're starting in the beginning, it's better to start in the middle somewhere on the very edge, because it's generally easier to hold and balance the blade. It's more difficult to hold it and balance it at this end, and when you get to the tip, there's not much metal to get your thumb there, and you don't want to get your thumb hit. So if you're just starting out and you want to do the easiest possible position, better in the middle somewhere. That's why I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. Very tip. Again, you won't be banging this hard or going this quick, okay? You want to go more softly and slowly, okay? But you know, perfect practice makes perfect, and slow it down and exaggerate to learn and teach. So okay, we're back again. Now I've shown you how, basically as a beginner, to peen the very edge, because that's what you're going to focus on, is just the very edge until you feel confident, and you can do it while smiling and while you're actually breathing and relaxed, okay? Because you're going to be tense to begin with, all concentrated and so many new things to learn. But once you feel at ease doing the very edge, then we need to progress to peening a little bit further away from the edge. And the reason for that is we need to actually shape the edge of the metal. Now I like the blade thin all the time, you know, really thin. I wouldn't call it razor sharp, you know, there are lots of different words you can use to describe sharpness, but I'll show you two methods I use to judge how thin the metal is and how sharp it is without drawing blood, okay? You don't want to draw blood on myself or anybody else or anything else to test the sharpness of the blade, you know, so be careful around blades. But it depends what you are cutting, you know. There are 3 different types of axes. You know, you've got your splitting axe, which will have a profile like this, maybe even with flares at the end to really split wood. You've got your compromise axe, which is a little bit sharper angle, and then you'll have your felling axe, which is much thinner. And if you use the wrong axe for the wrong job, you're not going to succeed, or you're going to damage the blade or damage the piece of work you're trying to do something on, okay? And it's the same with scythes, it's the same with kitchen knives, it's the same with any kind of tool or bladed instrument, okay? Nothing complicated there, it really isn't. But basically, if we are going to cut tough stuff, then we need a bit more of a steeper angle, and we don't want the very edge to be so thin and long, okay? So we need it more like that. If we're going to cut more young, early spring grass, then we might want kind of a longer, thinner edge so that the blade and the sharpness lasts longer, and we might want it, you know, to be thinner and more kind of soft. And we can have that thinness if we peen consistently and we don't bang into our blades, damage, okay? And that's what hopefully you're learning by practicing perfectly. But until you get even and consistent hammer blowing, you might not want to be too optimistic and get the edge too thin, because then you'll find that the damage occurs in the blade. Well, of course, we all know now, because I've told you 2 or 3 times, it's happening here at the anvil, isn't it? So, but anyway, there comes a point where we need to start banging, not just the edge here, but we need to start banging, you know, up here on my knuckles, okay? And I won't talk about bevels or the shapes, but, you know, try to keep it simple, because it really is simple, not complicated. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like to peen further from the edge, and as you get more confident on the very edge. So we want to keep the part that we're hitting with a hammer in the center of the anvil. Again, the blade must be 90 degrees to our anvil, roughly, and that's the reason why we've tilted our anvil forward for the shadows. We've mentioned that already, so we can see more clearly. So we'll position it. Of course, I kind of instinctively know generally how to hold the hammer, but you're going to have to kind of hit gently to start to see where the hammer is hitting. Okay, so I'm seeing little marks there, and then I'm adjusting, and then I will try and keep the hammer in the same place as I move the blade across. Can you see the reflection there at all, Mrs. Camera Lady?
Yeah, I can see them.
You know, the place I'm hammering here isn't very even, and this is partly why it's looking a bit like these lines aren't straight. But you have to try to sort of adjust the blade a little bit. Let's have a look at the edge. And you can see I'm really hammering very softly, because I'm hunting to see those marks, okay? And if you are able to just see what you're doing, that is, I believe, the first step to starting to give your arms your hammer hand the instructions to adjust slightly, you know. And the advantage of hitting softly is that any damage or inaccuracies we make, they will be kind of softened and blended out, because we're going to repeat this process maybe 4, 5, 10 times, depending on how thin the blade is. So it really doesn't matter, but what's important is you go slowly. Perfect practice makes perfect, and if we're trying to learn and get good, well, that's what we should focus on. You know, I say to people, we really want to make sure we don't do this just before we've got to mow. You know, don't do this under stress. Don't have your wife or your girlfriend or somebody calling you for dinner and say, I'll just quickly go and peen. You know, you want to find a block of time when you'll be undisturbed, no stress, and do it in peace so you really can concentrate. So, let's do a little bit more. And then we can go back and do another row next to it. And of course we want to blend all the rows in together. Doesn't look like my most impressive peening. I don't want to blame the blade. So I'm in a small section. I've done 2 rows now, very softly, so you know, not much metal is being moved. This is the 3rd line. Now we'll go from this end here backwards and do the 4th line on the right hand side. Don't speed up now, keep it all slow. And hopefully, after we've done this blade, we'll turn the camera off in a minute and we'll peen it all. Hopefully, the kind of little bends and inconsistencies of hammering, hopefully I'll be able to straighten out. And then in the future, if I carry on in a good way, these little marks on the hammers will be a little bit more, they will look a little bit more straight, and it will be a little bit more easy. This is one problem with, if you have a dirty blade, or if it's not being peened kind of really nicely, then as you peen, it's quite difficult to see if those marks are really straight. If you imagine you've got like a bumpy cobbled road, you know, and you're trying to kind of make a stamp on it with like a stationary ink stamp, you know, you make a stamp here. Well, because of the unevenness of the surface from the previous road layer or the previous peener, that stamp doesn't correspond quite right, you know, over this bumpy surface. And then you put another one next to it, and it doesn't quite lay straight either, so it looks a bit uneven. And then if you don't have the confidence in your stamping and the regularity to do it, you're still learning. How can you know whether you're doing it wrong, or it's just an uneven road, an uneven blade? So if you want to learn, some people think, well, I'll get an old blade, it's all rusty and dirty so I can't damage it, or look, I've got this blade, I won't ever mow again, and look, it's all uneven. It's a mistake, really. Use the quality blade that's been nicely peened and is smooth and in good condition. Peen the very edge only, so that any damage you do is minimised. And you know, try your best to hit slowly and carefully, so if you get it wrong, you don't create that damage. And then only move up to lines away from the edge as you get confidence. And I would say, first of all, you know, do the 1st line once you're confident, and then start doing just 2 lines. If at all it gets, you know, you feel nervous and panic and it doesn't go right, retreat quickly, straight to the 1st line, you know. And in that way, you're less likely to damage the blade, but you can have the confidence to start peening your best quality blade, okay? And give it the time it takes. Don't rush it. Pick a good, relaxed time. If there's someone irritating that will be coming chatting with you, or you know, stressing you, send them away. You know, find a good quiet time. And my experience is it's really worth learning properly and practicing properly. And this has been my goal in my life, because in the past I wasn't very good and I rushed stuff. So I'm trying to make a change, and I suggest to you to try and make a change as well. So we're going to switch the camera off and I'm going to peen this and we'll come back and see what it looks like. Thank you very much. Okay, we're quickly going to show you, because we clean forgot about it, that the marks are going to be on the hammer, and with skill you can hit in different places. Okay, so I'm going to try now to hit at one of the topper corners where we shouldn't be hitting. Right now the hammer is all clean, and then I will clean the hammer, or I will just do a few more bangs and we can see that the marks will be in the middle. So let's go for it. So we're going to aim for this corner up here. Let's have a look. Oh, it wasn't quite, it was more at the top in the middle. If you can see, that's... Okay, so this is the top of the hammer, and you can see that the marks are... I didn't quite get it where I wanted, but to demonstrate where you shouldn't have it. But now we're going to do some more hammer blows, and I'll show you I'll get it a bit more in the middle. But the target spot is in the middle, because then we are away from the dangerous edges, because we don't want to have the hammer at a sort of funny angle and get it with these sharp edges. So let's try. So, oh, it's more or less in the same place. Yeah, that's a little better. Kind of in the middle region. I'll hold it in the same place if I can. Tell me when you can see it and I'll talk.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, so this here is the top of the hammer again at the bottom of the screen, and hopefully you can see that we got some more there in the centre part. So that's where we're aiming for. Okay, so now I just want to demonstrate how I determine on how I sense if the blade is thin enough or thin for the job that I want to do. Remembering that we don't necessarily want it always to be the thinnest possible. We've got to adjust the shape of the blade depending on what we want, you know. And maybe we want two blades, one that we maintain really thin for young, beautiful grass, and one that we use a little bit thicker, like a more of a splitting axe, that we will use for cutting down dodgy bushes, and maybe if there are some rocks we haven't yet cleaned up lying around, we might use that blade in those areas. You know, of course we want to clear up the rocks and have beautiful, safe places to use our nicely maintained scythe blade if possible. So the method I use is I use the skin on my finger here, and don't panic, there's no blood involved, and I just pull it across gently, and the amount of gripping, the amount of kind of feeling of it catching the hairs or the very surface of my skin, and the sound it makes. You know, I just get used to in my mind the different stages of sharpness or thinness, and just get used to how I want it to sound. So, but you need to judge and feel yourself. You might want to use a different bit of skin, or you know, maybe you've got another bit of skin you would like to use. But I find if I just use a kind of loose, flabby bit of skin, which is on that knuckle, and this one sticks out and it's quite useful, so that's what I use. The other method is the thumb test, and the idea is that we are just, again, we are sensing the amount of pressure we apply with our thumb underneath in order to see the ripple reflection. And if I can press very softly, I'm hardly pressing anything here, and I can still see the metal ripple. Can you see that ripple at all?
Wait.
You might have to come behind me, because I can see it from my eyes.
Can you see it?
It's possible. If not, I have one other video I could insert in at this point with a much better. I think that's it. Anyway, basically the amount of pressure you have to apply in order to get that ripple, and basically all you're doing with your thumb is just bending the metal, and the thinner the metal is, the easier it is to flex it and then to see the light on it. So it's nothing complicated, but just again you've got to use your senses and determine, well, how much of I have to push, you know, and it's not that we want it paper thin, that, you know, how I blow on the edge and it ripples somehow, you know, that's ridiculous. But you need to use your own sense of judgment, and if you get it so thin and then you realise that it just gets damaged so easily, you know, maybe it's too thin, maybe you have peened it inconsistently thin, but you need to back off. You know, you need to use your own good sense and think for yourself. There's lots of great instructors, but ultimately you need to be your own instructor. Okay, try and learn as best you can from them, and it's not their responsibility to make you good though. Okay, it's yours. That's it. So we're back again. We have finished peening. Took us about half an hour, but if you're practicing, you know, take the time it takes. If it takes all day, you know, with breaks in between, don't worry, don't stress it, you know, because perfect practice makes perfect, and you have to take the time it takes. Been joined by my little friend here, Ronja, and she's a very funny creature, but she's our little homestead creature. Anyway, there was something else I was supposed to tell you, but if you want to have a look at the blade close up, this is camera lady. While she's doing that, I just want to extend my thanks to our Austrian fellow scythe teacher mower friend that we've just made, called Christiana, and she's very nicely here helping us video, and we're learning a lot and having good collaboration. So thank you very much, Christiana. So hopefully you have got something from this, but the main thing I want to emphasize before she presses the button on the camera is that this is just how we do it. You do it and find your own way. Sometimes if you find someone who's doing something good, it's good to try and duplicate them, but then after that, if you can add something to it, extend it somehow, or improve it, or just modify it so it suits you better, that's what it's all about. But the most important thing is to smile. At different angles a little bit and kind of not consistent. Even when I'm hammering, I'm just having to use kind of faith to hope. It's a bit like, have you peened any sickles at all? The
No.
ones from Schreckenfuchs are terrible.
The video's on.
Well, I've got a video on them, but the Italian ones were much thinner metal.
No,
and
this,
more Ah, I see. Now it's got it bent down a little bit more like the rest, you know. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you recording already?
Yes.
Okay, doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, I did know that it had this thing, but I
Yeah.
couldn't deal with
I
it.
know. I mean, it's better if you can't make